So in 3, 2, 1, go. So we start off in the Netherlands for this run, and to where it doesn't matter how fast we do kill these enemies. The enemies, it doesn't matter, as to where this is a 30-second long segment, and to where we can just simply mess around. And I'll try to explain the basis of this game. It's a beat 'em up with RPG elements, with some platforming. Even though we won't be punching or we won't be punching much in a beat 'em up, we'll be actually using these things called anarchy. This is quicken. This is frozen vocals. Right now we're being raised up. This is just the automated part. I'll explain the rest of the anarchy later on, while I also explain the story of this game. So you clearly see we were dead, actually. Those are the main antagonists of the game, the enemy band we shall be facing often in the Battle of the Bands. And they also somehow caused a zombie apocalypse while we were gone. Simply always use quicken in the beginning, and our main movement's going to be uppercutting, which just gives us a slight boost. And to basically explain what we're trying to do is just simply go to the Battle of the Bands, and that's it. We're not trying to kill them for whatever reason, even though they killed us. Here's our first like forced fight in the game. I'm simply gonna just set up quicken and just simply try to get rid of them, as that's the whole thing. We just want to get rid of as many of these automated fights as fast as possible by just spamming our anarchy. That will one-shot all the enemies, since we are on the lowest difficulty setting of the game, normal. So a lot of things will just be getting one shot throughout the run. Closing in. So you just simply keep on moving on forward by using this. And we are going to be heading to our first vehicle section of the game. There are a couple in this game. Right now this will be the only car section. Characters do have different cars. Lester just so happens to have a motorcycle. And we're going to simply just get rid of the enemies as fast as possible, as it does waste a lot of time. If any get by you, as the screen will just simply cycle through until you kill all the enemies. That's what we're going to do. Alright, that went really well. So right now we're on the final part of this, the highway. We only have to get rid of one more wave of enemies before the first boss of the game. Alright, that went very well. And the first boss of the game will be a group of ninjas in a bus, but since we're on normal, they'll simply get one shot, and that is the first boss down. Now we shall be moving through a cemetery on our way to a museum. Simply just do more of the same old, same old. And to where in the cemetery there is no forced fights, so a lot of it is going to just be us just simply running through, as we don't have to fight any of these enemies, even though they are here. That's a small optimization we do. Before the cutscene starts, we simply jump to give ourselves a head start in this. And as soon as he puts his head down, I initiate my run. Try my hardest to avoid the ghost. I usually get caught by one, which is fine. It doesn't waste too much time. We are nearing the end of the cemetery and on our way to the museum, which will have our second vehicle section of the game, if you want to call it that. As it's really not going to be a typical vehicle you see. We're going to be riding on a broom. Also, if you do activate quicken during this, you actually are able to bypass the wall through this section. As to where they do limit you how far you can go to the right. And this is going to just be a scene where we just try to get rid of more enemies as fast as we can. And another thing that I'm doing is actually mashing X, the fire button, for this part. As to where this is me holding it, and this is me mashing it. As to where the gun does fire a bit faster if you do that. This only works on a couple of weapons, and so far we've only found it works on the Uzi and the pistol. The other weapons cannot shoot faster. They are set to a limited amount. This part is just, we have to wait a bit. Doesn't matter how fast you go in that section, you do have to wait for the game to allow you to go back up from the trees. Simply get rid of more enemies from the air. going to be the final wave before the boss. We just went past by a Sasquatch museum. Ooh, there's one ninja. So the boss of this is obviously going to be a Sasquatch. But we're simply just going to get rid of him as fast as possible, and we're on to the next section of the game, Gore Castle, which is actually a theme park. As you can see right there. But since we didn't pay for tickets, we're simply just going to crash on through. While these witches try to stop us and ask for us to pay for our tickets, but we're simply just going to take care of them. Set up more acid storms. This will basically prevent a lot of the enemies from like progressing very fast. There you go, that one's nice. Here comes one of the few cutscenes, but this is the only skippable cutscene in the game. As soon as you hop on this raft, all this cutscene basically explains is the main antagonist Paul and how Charlie, one of the characters you can play in this game, betrays him by making a band without him, and that's the whole reason why he started a zombie apocalypse and killed us in the beginning, for whatever reason. So if we set up more, ooh, no bueno. Alright, we're going to be seeing the only glitch in this game. So for those enemies, they require to be curb stomped after they are fully defeated, as you need to like knock them down when their health bar is at 0. But if you do use any freeze move, it will bypass the need to curb stomp them, and it does save a decent amount of time, as you do need to mash X, and there's a cutscene, and that cutscene will slow down the game. Even though there aren't many curb stomp enemies, it's just good to do it, as it does save a lot of time when there's a decent amount of curb stomp enemies. We keep on moving through to the next vehicle section, which is going to be a grapple hook. Should be using a clothes hanger, as this is a reference to the movie Birdemic. If you've ever seen it, we're going to be using this clothesline to be defeating some hawks. We do like to call this section hawks and hangers, and there is a certain amount we do have to kill, and me using Quicken does allow me to move faster. There's also some that decide to shoot acid. We try to want to avoid that. It's kind of annoying. And another thing you may see me do is like facing back as soon as I hit. That's because there is no invincibility in this game. So once you get hit, you can literally get wombo comboed, which can add up to fast damage real quick. Or in normal, you don't take that much damage, but it's just more annoying. As you can see, I hit the hawk, but it attacked me back before it was fully off screen. And that's going to be the end of hawks and hangers. Ooh, I messed that up. It's fine though. Those enemies will always spawn in the same spot if you do stand in that area. Now we're just going to make our way to the end of Gore's Castle. Before we head up to the next boss, which also has another nice video game reference. What is a man? And this is Phantom Paul. Simply just run up and just one shot. Sometimes he'll avoid us. And that's the end of Phantom Paul. And that's the end of Gore Castle. We shall see where the adventure leads us after we're able to move on. And the whole time, Phantom Paul actually wasn't dead. He's simply going to just flip a lever to the trapdoor we just decided to stand on, which is going to lead us to the most platform section of the entire game, the sewers. This part can be troublesome, as to where if you are using Quicken, you are very slippery throughout all this, and it can be a problem trying to make certain jumps. We simply just want to get past the carts, as they do take a bit of time to destroy. We just want to get our way past the sewers as fast as we can, as there's also no mandatory fights we have to take. As you'll see, we'll see our first set of enemies, but we'll just simply bypass them. Do a couple more jumps, as we're actually going to do one more jump, actually. Past some barrels. There we go. Alright, now we're basically at the end of this. We just have one more screen to go through before we are on to the next section of the game. We're going to simply just go over to this platform and it's just going to fall over. It's going to be to the next boss fight of the game after we get rid of 2 waves of enemies on this raft. Simply plant some acid storms, throw a couple sarmatas. That will get rid of all the waves. Simply just spam, and that's going to be the raft boss. Now we simply just do have to wait until we transition to the next part. It's going to be kind of another vehicle section. You can also run off the raft a bit when you get near the end. Simply just watch a small cutscene. We're going to simply get rid of 2 ninjas. And for the rest of this, there's not much we can do. This is simply just a long auto-scroller. Even though I'm like at the edge of the screen, it doesn't speed any part up, so this will be a great part for any donations or anything that needs to be read off.
We don't have anything that needs to be read off right now, so we should be fine.
Alright, that sounds good. I'll just simply talk more about the differences in characters, as characters do have different stats in this game, as to where some will actually throw faster in these sections. Lester is one of the fastest ones in the game, while some will actually throw it slower. It's a minor difference in between characters, and it can impact on your decision on who you want to pick. Right now, the character I'm picking, the Lich, is the fastest variation for this game, as characters do have many different variations. They have four alternate, four alternate versions. One's normal, and the 3 are from alternate timelines, which all have similar themes. Right now, this is a very small section, the pirate ship. We just get our way through so we can get to the next boss, which will be kind of an on-rail shooter. We are going to have to get rid of his minions real quick, which are going to be zombie sharks, because why not? And somehow, these zombie sharks also figured out how to strap bombs onto themselves. I don't know how they figured that out. Also, since one of them did hit me, that will waste a bit of time between transition waves, as you do want to try to get rid of all the zombie sharks as fast as possible, as to where the transition in between waves will be a bit long, and it does waste time if you don't shoot all of them as quickly as possible. Moving on to the next boss, the sea monster. He's going to do 2 attacks real quick, but we'll just simply place our cursor over his mouth to block it. Then we'll shoot the pimple, and that's going to be his weak spot, and that'll be the end of the sea monster. Simply hop away from the pirate ship, land on a beach. And then the next part of this is going to just be a decent amount of just traversing. Not a lot's going to happen until the next screen. Hopefully, I did have the good cycle. That is good RNG if you can make the cycle. That is a small skip that we do. It's basically saves the time necessary to going around the hill and just making the jump normally. We're simply just gonna get rid of more enemies, and there's more curb stomp enemies in this area, but we only got in 1, which is expected. And right now, we are on our way to the gate part, to where we're gonna need to throw this baby to go grab us a key for that bulldozer, and we're gonna try to avoid bottles, as to where you do lose a second for every time you do grab 1 bottle. And to where we're gonna have to wait until the 3rd cycle of this, because the first 2, the key with the actual bottle won't actually like spawn, so you do just have to avoid the bottles, as to where you just want to try to traverse, as it does waste time. We have tried many ways to skip this, as it's just a long and not so fun part of the game, but sadly we have tried many things, but there is just simply an invisible wall past this gate. There's not much we can do. Right now we're going to try to look for a big bottle. It's up there. Alright, now that will be the end of this section. He shall simply fly to the bulldozer and knock down the gate for us and the visible wall that's blocking us. There's also going to be another reference very shortly, as we are going to see Pyramid Head in this playground. Obviously family friendly. Still have to get rid of some enemies real quick before we can move on towards our next destination, which is going to be an asylum. Just going to go past a camp real quick. As you can see right there, we're going to Peaceful Oaks for the asylum for lunatics. There we go. And now we're moving on to our next boss, the Shambling Lunatic. You won't be able to see his name because you can't interrupt some cutscenes for some of the bosses. We're also going to do the freeze glitch again, as we do need to curb stomp him. And that will be the end of the Shambling Lunatic. And we shall be moving on forwards into the asylum on our way to the Battle of the Bands. And throughout the asylum, we will be getting these slowdown moments. There's not much we can do. Depending on character, you can roll through that. It is a bit faster, but a majority of the time, you just simply have to walk, as the game forces you to do that. Here's another one, but it's a bit longer. And it does introduce the main enemies of this section of the asylum. But not right before we have to kill some more enemies before we face them, which is going to be mainly rats and nurses. And the rats can be a big problem, as they like to avoid death a lot of the time. You will simply like kill them and they'll just simply avoid it half the time. They'll just simply grab you still while they're at 0 HP. That was the first section, as these do spawn in the same spots every time. So there is no RNG in where these enemies are being placed, which is fine for the speedrun. Keep on moving along through the asylum before we do another minor skip. You would normally need to shoot down this lever to activate that, but we just simply jump over it, as we do have something called relics in the game, and these relics have different stats. They can increase either like your health or your jumping or your speed, and we just simply use them to make certain jumps in this game. And also, no matter how fast you do go during this section, you always have to wait for that platform. It's the only room in the game where you do have to wait for the game to like catch up. Right now we're going to another reference to Saw, as we are in the Venus flytrap and we need to escape. And to do that, we need to stab our eye out and do some QTE. Also, you can just spend all your time in the QT, but you will not die. So you can like just sit here for like 5 minutes just watching your character stab his eyes out while nothing will happen. And that's the end of it. And right now that is the end of the asylum. We're simply just going to go through one more room before we are out of it. So you can see the Battle of the Bands. So we are going. But you have to make a quick pit stop through a supermarket. Now for a couple of areas where we just do some movement. Simply use frozen vocals to destroy doors. It's kind of fast than just simply punching them. Right now we see the workers simply on their job, you know, just being eaten alive, you know, just the normal for them. Simply move on along before we are nearing the actual fights of the supermarket. Just gonna be obviously in the meat locker. As soon as we can jump over here. Set up more acid storms and just hope that they just behave. Thank you. Sometimes they'll just simply get stuck on the counter and not bother to jump, which can be quite annoying. Also, those enemies always spawn in the same spot, so we just simply use our Sar Modus to get rid of them. Oh, he spawned at the bottom. That's no good. Sometimes that happens. Alright, that is the end of the supermarket, and we are heading to the next part of the game. Simply just pass by this trucker to another quote-unquote vehicle section. Just gonna be on a shopping cart. And if you do use Quicken, it will kind of glitch out the game a bit, as you'll see very shortly. As you're not supposed to go as fast on this section, but if you do have Quicken, it does move the cart a bit faster. There is supposed to be a truck chasing us. You're just supposed to avoid the bricks, that's all. But since I'm too fast, you can't even see him. You have to wait until he hits the brick wall before we can actually fight him, which is going to be a roadie. Oh, there we go. That's the end of him, but we shall see him again later through on out the construction site. Now we're going to another vehicle section, which is going to be more just QTs with the skateboard. It also does not matter if you miss or actually do them. You do not lose time either way, so this is just an automated section basically. You don't have to do much. And also Quicken doesn't affect anything, I just like to put it on. Before we move on through the construction, just defeat one more wave of enemies. There we go. We're going to do some more skips. You're just going to skip the lever there. We're also going to need to skip using the barrels to activate this lever, and just simply use our anarchy to get rid of it. Move on through the construction site. Just ignore some more enemies, as there are some enemies in this area. Before we are on to the next boss, as I said, we shall meet the roadie again. And somehow, by the time we met him again, he somehow became infested. This is also one of the few two-phase bosses. You simply do have to punch him once. There we go. I got scared for a moment. You can soft lock on him if you do hit him. If you do interrupt his cutscene, he will soft lock. So that is something I do not recommend you do. Moving on towards the most RNG part of the run, which is going to be the mall, as I shall explain it very shortly. It's also just a nice little trick we do here. Normally you would need to use these grenades, but we'll just simply clip our way using cars by using a relic that allows us to pick up destroyed items, and that's what we use to just simply get past these barricades. That's sadly the only time we'll be able to see the clip, as it's only used for those set of barricades, as the rest of the barricades in the game can just simply be destroyed by the items that the enemy drops. Now here comes the RNG part of the mall. As these enemies just randomly appear, we need to get rid of them as fast as possible by using the frozen vocals as to where they are needed to be curb stomped, and we just don't want that. So there's 5 of them. So far we got 1 out of 5. We shall see, as there shall be 2 more in this next section. Alright, so 2 out of 5 right now. Just moving along throughout the mall. Here is the last enemy. Hopefully he does not pop up. Alright, 2 out of 5 is not bad of RNG. We're going to do another skip. Normally you would need to time these levers and just do all this, but if you have enough jump relics, you can just simply make the jump from one to the another. Oh, good. So if we just move past these enemies, they can't get in your way a lot of the time. Also, another thing to mention for normal, this is kind of like New Game Plus in the aspect as to where once we enter the portal, a lot of the one-time bosses will not appear again. There's only a certain amount of bosses that aren't one-time only, as they are needed to like start cutscenes. So a lot of the bosses we are avoiding in this category, but in other categories we will fight them. Right now we are in the club that Charlie actually performed in before an incident happened, because Paul caused it to actually burn down. There's gonna just be some spiders we have to pass by with some scary looking faces. Pass by some SWAT team members who are down here for whatever reason. They are very annoying sometimes. Just normally want to try to avoid them. We're going to go down towards these spikes, as there are spikes. Nearing the end. jump over here. Just skipping another mandatory fight scene, because that is actually one of the few fights that we do skip. Actually, it is mandatory in when you're first playing the game, but if you do a second playthrough, it's not required. Going past the dance floor onto one of the final bosses of the game. Once we get back on our last vehicle section, sadly, which is going to be the broom again. Simply just, this is where the quick in ability, or the glitch, actually does help us here, as he does spawn on the right. He spawns randomly on the right. Oh, there it is. Now what we just shot down is a heli van, and it was just, the people in the heli van were just the enemy band, as we are in the final section of the game, which is the amusement park where we're going to be performing for the Battle of the Bands. Simply just wait for this cutscene to pass by through. Throw our broom, as it really doesn't allow us to do this movement. Move on through as we are on our way to the amusement park. This is also where the game tells you where all the relics are to get the true ending, which we are going to do for the run, as it's the only way we allow it on the boards is to do true runs only, as it does unlock the final boss and the final section of the game. We'll just simply pass Paul, and we're going to enter the final level, HE double hockey sticks. This is going to just be 4 waves of enemies we have to simply get rid of before we make our way to the final boss of the game and unlock the true ending. Simply move on our way. These spider scorpions are also pretty bad in their AI aspect, as they do like to get stuck on walls a lot. That section went nice. Now we just do kind of some more platforming, as this area does have some more platforming in it. Simply jump over these mouths if we can, as they do spawn in these spikes if you do land on the mouth. This part you can platform through, but it's kind of annoying to like actually platform on this part, so we just simply just run through it and just hope you don't get hit. Another fight section is about to happen. Thankfully, ooh, we got a Mr. Potato. Just to explain the Mr. Potato enemy, he's just a random spawn, and all he doesn't attack the player, he just simply gives the player items upon defeating him. So sometimes he can be good. There we go, another section. We are moving to the final fight. This will be the final set of enemies we have to get rid of before we are on our way to the final boss. Let's play some more acid swarms. There we go. It's also good if you don't get the slowdown every time you defeat a wave, because every time you do defeat a wave, the game will notify you by slowing down the game. Time is about to come up shortly. I will say when the timer will end. Right now, this is going to be the final boss. The Angel of Chaos, the cause of all the zombie apocalypse. So hopefully he just come towards me, so I can just throw some Sarmatas. We didn't get a crit. Normally you would require a crit to one-shot him, but we'll simply come over here, and time. Alright, that's the final boss, and that's Charlie Murder Normal.
For whatever reason it didn't split, but it was a 28-44.
28-44?
Yeah.
That might